Hello, welcome to this companion to A.K. Warder's Grammar Guide, an introduction to Pali. Today we look at Lesson 8, which covers more on the instrumental case, present participles, and the gerund in Pali. And of course there are links down in the description below, both to the source text and the answers to exercise 7 from last week's tutorial. This is Pali Studies on the Learn Pali channel. So, Warder begins Lesson 8 with a detailed look at the uses of the instrumental case. He is quite thorough, so I'm only going to summarise here. If you remember, from last week's tutorial, masculine and neuter noun stems in A take the "-ena" and the "-ehi" endings to mark instrumental nouns, and we find it's quite close to the usage of English prepositions by and with, in that it's used to denote the means, instrument or agent by which an action is performed. These are the most important usages to mark the agent of a passive voice sentence. Here it is the freed prince who is doing the seeing, or to mark the instrument by which something is done, be it a tool, an implement, or even a part of the body, or the means through which or via something is achieved. Unlike by and with in English, it can mean the cause or the motive for something. Unlike the word with, it can simply mean accompaniment or association. And in this usage, the instrumental noun is often coupled with one of two adverbial particles: saha, which usually goes before the instrumental noun, and sading, which normally follows the instrumental noun. And both these mean along with or together with. But saha sometimes expresses equality, as in this example, which is literally a father wealthy as his son. In fact, the instrumental noun alone can also sometimes express just equality. And similarly, the instrumental noun can mean possessing a characteristic. And when accompanied by the past participle samanagata, the instrumental case takes on the meaning of endowment. Okay, I want to move on now to the present participle. Participles, the adjective form of the verb, are very important in Pali, and so we're going to look at how we form present participles and how they are used. Last week we saw how they are formed in English, and the present participle is just the ing form of the verb. This is quite simple, but their formation in Pali is however a little more complicated. First off, they're all formed on the present stem, and predominantly take an nt infix. And this is easy to remember because the word present ends nt. And that is more than just coincidence, as English is related to Latin, which in turn is related to Sanskrit. And there are also some present participles which take the infix mana. Some grammar guides separate this participle ending out and call it the reflexive or middle ending, but it's lost any reflexive meaning and can be treated exactly like the nt participle. And there's also an archaic ending which appears on some verbs, and I'll represent this just with the infix t. Now if you compare grammar guides, the description of present participle formation often differs, and this is mainly due to the different ways of dividing the root from the stem. I'm not at all being strict here, but I present it this way mainly for clarity. Anyway, if we look at the forms of the present stem that we've seen so far, the first class characterised by a, the sixth class by o, while the seventh class can end in either e or ea. And we can see that the sixth class retains that o sound and the seventh class retains that a sound. And remember, these are just the base forms, which are then declined just like all adjectives, to agree with their noun in gender, case and number. So if we now look at the case endings we've seen so far for masculine and neuter nouns, we can generate partial paradigms as the nt and mana present participles are all declined like a-stem nouns. The archaic form, however, is declined a little differently. These forms are found usually only in the singular, where in the nominative the t and the ng ending always results in ang, and there are no endings in the accusative case, but there are in the other oblique cases. And notice with the seventh class, it's only the ea variant which takes this archaic form. And so we can see how the paradigm given by Warder for the verb gacha is formed. And notice that the neuter instrumental and the masculine are exactly the same. So, next let's turn to how they are used. Last week, we saw that in English present participles are used both as adjectives, but also to form the progressive verb aspect in the active voice. Well, you may be pleased to know that Pali, like Sanskrit, doesn't differentiate the simple verb aspect from the progressive. And this means that the present participle in Pali is largely non-finite, functioning either adjectively or occasionally as a substantive. So now if we push a bit more deeper, like past participles, present participles can act as simple adjectives, in which case they agree with the nouns that they qualify. So here, upasankamante is both plural and an accusative case, because brahmano is plural and is the object of the verb to see. But present participles can be used in a phrase or a clause to qualify a noun, in which case we can often insert the word while. Here the phrase gamang gachang means while going to the village, the Blessed One taught the Dharma. So in this way we can use present participles to describe when two or more events are taking place simultaneously, with the present participle phrase often adding some context to the main action which is expressed by the finite verb. So note that present participles are not called present because they necessarily occur in the present tense, but rather, as these examples show, the present participle occurs at the same time as the main verb. And this nicely brings us to what Warder calls the gerund. I'm actually going to use the term absolutive here, because it's the more common term used in modern grammar guides. Moreover, the word gerund is actually misleading, as it's used to refer to a different feature in English grammar. So if we use the term absolutive, we won't be confused by how the term gerund is used in English. Okay, now, whereas the present participle indicates an action that occurs alongside the main verb, the absolutive indicates an action that occurs before the main verb. And so in this case it's common to insert the word after or having, followed by a past participle. Having gone to the village, the Blessed One taught the Dharma. Absolutives are also sometimes called the indeclinable participle, because they do not change to agree with anything. Instead they're identified by the suffixes tvar and ya, and these can be added either to the present stem or directly to the verbal root in a similar way as we saw with past participles in the last lesson. So if we look at tvar first, when the root ends in a vowel, it's added directly, and roots ending in a long vowel are sometimes shortened. When the root ends in a consonant, the suffix may be added by means of a connecting I. The initial t of tvar may assimilate, but on occasion the final consonant of the root is dropped before tvar is applied, and in this case the root vowel is often strengthened. There are also a couple of archaic forms that you may come across, and these follow pretty much the same pattern. Now the suffix ya is mostly added to verbs that have prefixes, and the initial y sound often assimilates, which may result in a doubling of a consonant, and so is sometimes difficult to recognise because of this assimilation. But although the absolutive is indeclinable, they are still verb-like and can take objects. And it's very common in Pali to come across chains of absolutive phrases strung together, in which case the absolutive is usually at the end of its phrase, like a main verb. And this fact helps us to identify the different sections of a sentence. Well, I'm going to leave Lesson 8 here. We've seen how present participles indicate an action which is happening alongside the main verb, whilst the absolutive indicates an action which happened before the main verb. Warder gives us some more vocabulary to learn, and this is followed by Exercise 8. Now, hopefully you had a go at Exercise 7, and the answers to this can be found on the Wisdom and Wonders webpage, a link to which is down in the description. And in next week's lesson we'll be looking at the passive indicative verb, as well as feminine nouns. And if you want to get up to speed on this early, there's already a tutorial on the passive verb, as well as more information on the Pali Studies blog.